Well, as I live and breathe, it's us again, Johnny,
On our very own.
on our very own, mate. You and me on our own. Now, look at us. We look like a couple of scruffs, don't we? I've been out in a roaring,
We do.
freezing cold wind, eh?
Unshaven.
Unshaven. Who'd want to follow us anywhere?
Yeah. No,
Wednesday, the 30th of July, Johnny, and good to talk to you, mate. And a
you too, mate.
little bit of stuff going on around the place at the moment, isn't there? Now, let's start off. This is just an update. We're still in the throes of lining up some dates for some really great guests. Now that's how things work at Club Grubbery. You get a whole glut of people, and then there's a little lapse, and then there's a whole glut again. So stay tuned, and we're going to keep some. We've got some really good interviews in the pipeline. So including one coming up with Professor Joe Howe, the anti-abortion activist from Adelaide, John, talking about the government actually supplying about nearly $4,500 as a stillborn baby bonus to people who've lost a child in a failed pregnancy after 20 weeks. Now, I would imagine that was probably set up to because if a mum's carried a baby for that long, there's going to be a lot of trauma. There's going to be probably some issues around who knows employment or income or whatever. And as a bonus to someone who's gone through that, you couldn't say there was a lot wrong with that. But Johnny, it's actually being used by people for nefarious purposes. As Joe Howe has found out, she's been contacted by several midwives and a hospital administrator in Adelaide who said that one lady recently had a 21-week pregnancy terminated, deliberately terminated, and she explains in her videos how that happens. They inject some kind of acid into the heart of the baby, and apparently there's no sedatives issued or anything, and the fetus, the baby, not fetus, I hate that term, the baby dies a pretty painful and agonising death. Then the mother presents to a maternity ward, and the stillborn baby is birthed in the birthing suite or in the theatre or wherever. And because that's a stillborn baby, the mother is able to claim the $4,275 bonus. So the government is either advertently or inadvertently funding the murder of children.
Mm.
Now that's reprehensible, John. Now, one lady in particular, which really sparked this off, she said, "Oh, the money's going to come in handy because I'm going to Bali for a holiday, and it's going to pay for my holiday."
Jeez.
Now, there's only 1,000 ways that can go wrong, isn't there?
Yeah. And they probably found all thousand of them.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
well, beggars belief, Hoodie, that that could be allowed. Uh,
yeah,
I mean, this Centrelink is out of control. I mean, you can't kids can't access Centrelink when they're living away from their parents um, unless they're over 23 for rental assistance or anything when they're
yeah, yeah,
with uni. But you can get it for that, and that's outrageous.
yep, yep. Absolutely, it is outrageous. And so, we're Joe Howe's coming on. She's got a busy week this week, but she's coming on to talk to us about that. And we're hoping to get a bit of a panel together with her. So, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there, John. You have been a bit uplifted by a guy wandering around Sydney visiting pharmacies.
Mm. Yeah,
Tell us the
George.
story.
Yeah, George Kessick. I've got the pronunciation of that right, George, but this guy's a champion. I've seen him now for the last few days on Facebook. I'm not sure what other platforms he's on, but look, I might reach out to him and see if he'll come and talk to us, Hoodie. But what a great project he's got happening. He's essentially running around. It appears to be in the northern suburbs of Sydney,
Hmm.
from what I can see, around Hornsby and Camaray and Willoughby, those places. But he's going to the pharmacies and he's calling it the cease and desist project. He goes in there and he asks them whether whether they're vaccinating kids, and quite often they'll come back and say, "Oh, how old?" And he'll say, "Oh, 15." And then they'll run away and they'll ask the pharmacist, or he'd be speaking to the pharmacist, and they'll say yes or no. And then, depending on what the answer is, he pulls out the TGA recommendations and gives it to them and says, "Well, are you going to continue doing it? Because in fact, you're not doing the right thing." And it's pretty interesting stuff because he's in one instance there was a place in Camaray, I think it was, that said that they'd actually stopped, regardless of the advice from the TGA, because just in their pharmacy alone, that they were seeing vaccine injuries in children from the jabs they were giving. So they had taken the view that they wouldn't continue giving them regardless. So here we've got this real interesting um, a situation where some of them are very pro it, some of them are obviously in fairyland about the background story with the TGA, and some have had first-hand experiences which have led them to not continue with it regardless. So I think it's an interesting story, Hoodie, and I think that just demonstrates what people can do if they're of a mindset to actually go out and do something positive.
Yeah, and look, Rosemary Marshall and several other people have been doing that, delivering notices to pharmacies for the last couple of years, and with limited success. But I think what's different about George is that he goes in and says, "Listen, I've got a 15-year-old son. I want to get vaccinated. Can that be done here?" And then he's armed with the
Mm,
immunisation handbook. So he's actually saying, "Well, you just said yes to something that the immunisation handbook says you're not meant to do, and that makes you liable." I mean, that is an attention grabber. That's a really sensible. I'm not saying the others weren't sensible, but I think at this time in our history, this is a really good approach because the government and the media aren't going out there, John, telling everybody that we shouldn't be vaccinating these kids, even though they've published it in the handbook. I would have thought that would have been, given the push that they've had on vaccines in the last 4 years, they should have been out there saying, no, hold the phone. Let's not
mm.
do it. But they haven't been, have they?
No, well, and our mate Alan Novak essentially brought this to our attention that
Mm.
during a GP visit he asked the question, and the GP was unaware that the recommendations had changed. So, I mean, this is the crazy situation we're in, that we've still got New South Wales Health here in our state uh, putting out nonsense about, oh, get a jab for Pa now. That's what they're doing. It's not get a jab for Grandma, because Grandma's probably um, she's had too many. So Pa needs a few now. So this is what they're up to. I,
Yeah.
get a jab for par, but there's still no, oh, well, look, if you're under 18, you can't have it. There hasn't been any formal notification, to the best of my knowledge, publicly about that, and that should be happening. I mean, it's just crazy that it's not. And Alan Novak, another guy who really is just out beating the pavement. I mean, he organised a meeting with the health minister in South Australia, Chris Picton, and the feedback from Alan in relation to that has been absolutely positive. And Alan was really, from what I can understand, was able to position himself in that meeting so that the minister had a very good understanding of what the ramifications were of continuing, and how uh, a lot of people ended up poorer for these mandatory decisions. And once again, just another example of beating the pavement and just yeah, I'm going to make a difference.
And he had a doctor with him too. And then lo and behold, John, he goes to Mark Butler's electoral office to deliver 42,000 signatures on a petition relating to the IHR amendment. and only to be told, having asked for an audience with Mr. Butler, the health minister, was told by the staff in that office that he was overseas.
Mm.
So Alan and his mate walk out and they decide to go down the street to have a coffee. And who do they run into walking towards his office but our illustrious Mark Butler? And they had a chat with him and they handed him the petitions and he asked whether they wanted him to table it in Parliament. And they said yes. But here's the thing, John, they had an ample opportunity to rag and bag Mark Butler. And what do you reckon that would have achieved?
Yeah, probably not as much as going the opposite way and being sensible with the approach.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, had we been there, one of us would have called him a grub, and I'll give you a hint who would it might have been. It wouldn't be me. and but I mean, you can imagine running into Brad Hazard, Johnny.
Mm. Well, he would already know what was going to be forthcoming. Wouldn't be too many surprises, I don't think, would he?
No, there wouldn't be. There wouldn't be, mate. So there's lots of. Have you noticed? Does the world seem to be going crazy all of a sudden, or is it just me?
No, it does seem to be going crazy. I don't think you're imagining things. It just seems to be um, completely foreign to the majority of us. A lot of this stuff's just kicking off all over the place, and people are really being triggered by stuff and the lies and the agendas and the madness that we've experienced over the last 5 years just seems to be morphing into other things, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, it does, and it's really concerning. There's a mood in the country that really concerns me. Um, there's a lot of hatred out there that wasn't there even a year ago. There's a lot of hatred out there. I'll give you an example. There are members of my family who are of the Muslim faith, and uh, beautiful. It's my daughter married an Egyptian Muslim guy who didn't insist that she become a Muslim, but she loved living over in Egypt with him and seeing the way that the families respected one another in that faith, and she wanted to become a Muslim. And I can't argue with that because I was an atheist when she was growing up, and I didn't give her any spiritual upbringing. So, but I can tell you that my son-in-law is one of the finest men I know. He's just a beautiful, beautiful man, and they've raised three gorgeous grandkids and they are beautiful. If you saw them in the street, you wouldn't know there was anything different about them. She doesn't wear a hijab or a burqa or anything like that. And when she said she was wanting to become a Muslim many years ago, he said to her, "Well, why do you want to do that? Aren't you happy being a Christian?" She said, "Well, I'm not. I don't think I'm anything. I don't know what I am because I haven't had any spiritual upbringing." So um, I've spent hundreds of hours talking with him. We've got a very similar interest in global politics and faith as well. And I understand Islam a whole lot better than I did, you know, 15 years ago. Plus, I've been working with people like I met a couple in Phoenix, Arizona when I went to that conference, and they're Christian. He's a Christian pastor and his wife. They do a lot of ministry with Muslims who are converting to Christianity, and they have a beautiful picture of the Muslim fraternity. Um, but CNN and the world media would have you believe that if anyone is not of a Christian faith from the Middle East, then they're a terrorist and a murderer. And there's a lot of people bought into that narrative, and I think that's really, really sad in a couple of areas that are happening now. I'm not talking about Gaza and Israel just yet, but recently there was a march, a parade of Muslim men through Melbourne, and there's thousands of them, and they were marching through the streets, and apparently they stop, as is their custom, every few minutes, and they do a little chant, and they tap their chest, and it's just a thing that they've been doing for years, and it happens all over the world on the same date every year. And So I called my son-in-law and I said, "What's that about?" And he said, "Oh, look, it's a festival. It's a thing." And he said, in many ways, them stopping out the front of a Christian church and doing what they did was in a way showing a mark of respect, because Muslims believe that Jesus is coming again to save them, but they just don't believe he's the Son of God. So, they once again, the majority, in fact, every Muslim I've ever met has been a beautiful, generous person. So when 9/11 happened and all that stuff was going on, and we now know, was that really Muslims, or was there some other nefarious actors in there making it out that they were Muslims? But even during that period of time, there were Muslims all around the world grieving what happened in America then, and of course there were some who were happy. Now you look at a place like Palestine, and you wonder about terrorism. Well, when any minority group of any nationality are cornered and downtrodden for decades, there is going to be breeding in that group a desire for justice, terrorism. And who should know better than that, more about that than people of the Jewish faith? Because it was Menachem Begin in the 40s who blew up the King David Hotel. Menachem Begin went on to be Prime Minister of Israel. He's acknowledged by his own mouth as the father of global terrorism. Now, they needed to do that back in those days, John, because they couldn't get global attention any other way. The Irgun, which was the party that he was running, they went on to be. They were a terrorist organisation, and they did it to get global attention to their plight. And there was a time when there was a whole lot of issues going on in local government in Jerusalem, and Zionist terrorists were blowing up Muslim councillors, Shia councillors, with car bombs because of issues around in Jerusalem at the time. It may have had something to do with Temple Mount. So Israel has been a proponent of terrorism. So to come out now and say that everyone who lives in Gaza is a terrorist and deserves whatever punishment they get, to me, is a bridge too far. That is a bridge too far. So it's like Victoria invading New South Wales over the border, a sneaky invasion one day, and murdered 1,500 people and then crept back across the border. And the New South Wales people decided that they were going to teach Victoria a lesson, and they killed 100,000 people in retaliation. I don't know how that passes a pub test. But here's the thing, John. The minute we ask the question, we're branded anti-Semitic or pro-terrorism. Now, that's crept into this country, and I have to say that it's crept in on the side of independent media. There are some voices, personalities in independent media who have jumped on this bandwagon on both sides that are doing a lot of damage, an awful lot of damage. For example, I believe it's crazy to organise anti-Muslim protests in a city like Melbourne after what happened that day without understanding what those people were doing there. And that's what's been going on. And I have been engaging with a couple of people who've been rallying the troops for these particular events and saying, has anyone even asked someone from the Muslim community what that was all about? The answer, John, is no, they haven't. They've just assumed that this was an anti-Christian event being held by Muslims. And when we assume, we make an ass out of you and me. Then you've got some people on our side of the fence who are saying anyone who speaks against Israel is pro-terrorism and is acting in an ungodly way. Well, put me on the list, because I'm very critical of geopolitical Israel at the moment, because there's a lot of things that don't add up. But I can't think of anyone on earth that I hate. I don't hate anybody, John. You know that. That some people are pushing both sides of this agenda to the extent that they are is damaging in a way I don't think they've considered. and that is that the hate speech bills going through and being lobbied about in the parliaments of Australia, state and federal, are being given fodder by people who are supposedly well-meaning, not thinking through. Now, there's one bloke in particular who's an influencer in the freedom space who's prattling on about anti-Semitism. He's saying that anti-Semitism is a curse, and wherever I live, I'm going to do everything I can to put it down. Well, that just plays right into the hands of the lobby groups, and I say the Jewish lobby groups, and we know this for a fact. There are Jewish lobby groups who are lobbying the government to shut down any kind of free speech because they don't want anything pertaining to a distrust of Israel. Now, through the week, John, two human rights organisations in Israel came out, Israeli citizens came out and accused their government of genocide by starving people. People around the world are starting to say, hang on a minute, you had our sympathy a while ago, but you're starting to wear it a bit thin.
Mm.
Is it your intention to clean out the Gaza Strip and create a resort like Donald Trump's talked about? Because if that's your intention, that doesn't pass the pub test whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, or you're an atheist. That just doesn't pass the pub test. But what concerns me more than anything, whether you believe in Ukraine or Russia or Israel or Palestine, either way, you're entitled to your views. But while you're arguing semantics and who's telling lies, tens of thousands of people are dying and nobody's doing anything about that. And we are denigrating any opportunity we have to have viable democratic free speech in this country because some of you are aiding and abetting the woke's position on shutting free speech down. And that really concerns me. Really, really concerns me. And I think it's time everyone cooled their heels. People need to read their history. And Christians who are coming out making some bold statements need to read their Bible. I've said to you before, John, anyone who believes in Christ is a citizen of spiritual Israel. I'm a citizen of spiritual Israel. But I'm not a citizen of geopolitical Israel. And from what I'm seeing now, and this is just my view, John, I'm not dragging you into this, but I have to say it. If there's a need for regime change in the Middle East, it needs to be Netanyahu. He needs to go. And a lot of Jewish people are saying that. I saw a wonderful interview with a rabbi in the streets of New York who was asked randomly what he thought about what's going on over there. And he said, Zionism in Israel is destroying everything we set out to achieve. He was dead against it. He said, my forefathers have lived peacefully with Arabs in that area of the Middle East for hundreds of years. And there's no need for any of this. So when people like that and people in Israel are starting to protest, we all need to cool our heels and think these things through and be logical about it. But taking a stance one way or the other and being adamant and organising rallies about things that we don't fully understand, and the rise of ultra right-wing Christian nationalism in this country, John, is really concerning.
Mm. Mm.
I mean, this is very similar to the ramping up of the rhetoric that went on in Germany in the 20s and 30s, and we got to be careful because that's what our Anzacs and our diggers went over there to fight against. So I'm urging. I've talked too long already, but I'm urging everybody in this space to sit on your hands, analyse the situation, and get out of the hate mode. It's just not working. It's doing more harm than good. And the powers of division in this country are actually feasting on it. They're feasting on it. Now, I've had a lot to say about Albanese. I think he's done a lot to divide the country. But at least on Palestine, Israel, he's had the courage to come out and say he thinks it's wrong. And he's been saying that all along. So, that's all I'm going to say on that, John. I'll hand the microphone over to you.
No, well, look, Hoodie, I think we're right to analyse it. And I mean, that's all we've said with the COVID situation all along as well. I mean, there's so many false flags out there. I mean, let's look at that caravan incident in New South Wales where they ramped up the severity of that and overplayed it significantly so that they could ram through legislation that they knew wouldn't otherwise pass the pub test. So, I mean, it's going on everywhere, and I think you're right to say, look, just take a deep breath. And when you look at really what's going on in these places, the real issue is that children and families are being killed or injured unnecessarily, and with the there's been a number of significant reports in the last couple of weeks about the lack of food, and that's evidenced in some of the graphic pictures that are coming out of some of these areas with children that are severely malnourished. I mean, you've obviously seen them, Hundi, but I mean severely malnourished. I mean beyond. A lot of these kids will not survive. There's no question about it. So I think it's a reasonable thing. Look, we just don't know what's going on. I mean, this is the problem. I mean, it's a long way away. There's a lot of uh, tensions from both sides, and I think yeah, take a deep breath and let's just see what develops. I don't think I think there's a lot of um, obviously people are in this country would more, I think, sway towards defending what's going on in Israel. But as we've seen, that may not necessarily be the case. So I think it's time for people just to look at the facts. As we've said with COVID all along, let's look at the facts. Let's look at what we actually do know and make an assessment. And that's all we ask.
That's all we're doing. And the thing is, we've always strived as much as we can get very animated too, Johnny, to keep the conversation real and to keep it pragmatic. And as much as we've been angry with certain politicians and bureaucrats, we've not we've not called for people to storm the parliament or hang them under the nearest tree. We're
We
trying to
have on
maintain a. Eh?
I have on occasions.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean that's Australian malarkey. But at the end of the day, the only way we're going to have respectful dialogue that brings about change for the better is to have respectful dialogue. And if the minute we stop being respectful, and people can call that soft, they can call it weak.
Mm.
I call it reading the room.
Yeah. Well, and reporting the facts, Hoodie, and I think that's what people have to look at here. I mean, even Liz Storer, who has recently departed Sky News. I mean, she made some comments on 2SM Radio to say that Sky News had a bias towards Israel, and essentially, from what I interpreted from her comments, that there was a lot more that could have been reported on that wasn't being told to the public. So these are the things that need to be told. And I think the media, once again, are unfortunately the root cause of a lot of this veering off the tracks.
Yeah, John, anyone who's watched the movie Schindler's List, have you watched it?
Yeah.
Look, I've watched it several times. It breaks my heart.
Mm.
The scene in the movie that really broke my heart was at the very end when the Itzhak Stern, the accountant who worked for Oscar Schindler in the factory, played by Ben Kingsley, um, when it was all over and they were getting their freedom, they all donated bits of gold from their teeth and melted it down and made a ring. And the inscription on the inside of the ring translated into these words: "He who saves one life saves the world entire." I think that's from the Talmud. Now,
Mm.
anyone who's out there who's claiming to back Israel or back Palestine or whatever, that sentiment should hold good whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew. It shouldn't matter. Whoever saves one life saves the world entire. And the fact that some people are forgetting those scriptures. And another one I want to bring up is one out of the Bible. It's Proverbs 6, verses 16 to 19. There are six things the Lord hates, seven that are detestable to him. I've just done a series on Church Without Walls on hatred. And I commend everybody to go to churchwithoutwalls.com.au. I do daily devotionals there, and I've done one on hatred, and I did a sermon on it as well, and that's available. It's up there now. And these things that God detests are a haughty eyes, and that's, prideful, a lying tongue. Now, there's a lot of that going on in these debates. Someone's lying, or maybe they're all lying. Hands that shed innocent blood, John. Now, for anyone who's claiming a righteous biblical perspective on what's going on in Israel, this is what God believes from Proverbs 6, verses 16 to 19. He detests hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes. How much of that's going on in the world today, Johnny? Feet that are quick to rush into evil. There's a lot of that going on. A false witness who pours out lies. Boy, oh boy, there's a lot of that going on. And a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Stirs up conflict in the community. So doubt me, if you will, but go to Proverbs, as I said, chapter 6, verses 16 to 19. So for me, that says it all. Hands that shed innocent blood, people who stir up trouble in the community. John, we have said a million times, we'd be happy to be wrong on any of the assertions that we've made on this program, or assisted others in making, some of the interviews in the 500 shows we've done. We want to be, we're not addicted to be right. I don't want to be right, because the penalty on others for me being right or you being right is too big a price to pay. We don't want to be right. We would love to be wrong. And we invite anybody from government, from bureaucracy, to come on and explain where we're wrong. I'm not talking about people like Daniel Ninio and these clowns. I'm talking about people who can legitimately sit down with us and a group of people and say, let us show you where we think you're wrong. And then we can make our minds up. But the blanket silence from everyone concerned is a worry. And that's now, as far as the Middle East is concerned, or anywhere else in the world, if this is an act to stamp out terrorism that Israel's doing, it's going to have the opposite effect, because nothing breeds hatred into the hearts and minds of people, oppressed people, than what's going on over there at the moment. So if your whole idea, Bibi Netanyahu, was to destroy Hamas, you probably just created a massive recruiting drive for them. Those people that have been through what they've been through the last 2 years are going to hate Israel for the rest of their lives. And who can blame them? Who can blame them? So it's not achieving the objectives. It never has. It never will. There's so much more can be said about it, but the less said, the better, I think, now.
Yeah, well, anyway, we've got an initiative at the ACA, which I think will have a big impact, Hoodie. I suppose in some respects it's a bit like stirring up conflict in the community, but for a good purpose. What we're proposing to do, and this was the brainchild of Dr. Rob Peterson, who's on the board. And I think it's a good one. So we've essentially nearly got to a point on the board where we've agreed on what's going to be in the letter, but it essentially will put it in the minds of those police what they might be asked to do, and whether it's lawful, whether it's morally acceptable, or morally bankrupt, as we would put it, whether it's constitutional, what they're asking you to do, because there are a whole heap of issues that need to be sorted out in relation to the regulations with the WHO, because it's our belief that the WHO really can't enter into any contract with Australia because they're not a nation, uh, and therefore there are constitutional issues. So what we're essentially going to the police with is to say, well, are you aware that as a result of these pandemic treaties and IHRs and all the rest of it, that the WHO will essentially be allowed to take control of Australia in a pandemic, and they will then recommend actions. And we know in Western Australia that one of those actions is in law already, which says that people can be force vaccinated in their homes. Now, I'll put it to you, Hoodie, that the police are going to play a very heavy hand in that role.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, what we're proposing to do is essentially come up with this letter, which should be out in the next few days, and we're encouraging people to print it out, sign it, take it up to your police station, and deliver it. And I think anyone that's led a life of service, whether they be a priest, whether they be an SES volunteer, an RSS volunteer, a community police officer, a volunteer, doesn't matter. If you've worn a uniform, why not put your uniform on when you go and deliver it?
Absolutely. It adds to the credibility of your presence in that situation. I think that's a great initiative. ACA continue to do great stuff, John. Congratulations to you and the crew, because they are a focal point for rational debate, which is what we desperately all need.
And there's some really great people sort of in the background still too. People like Professor Ian Brighthope are still
Mm.
advisors to the board, etc. So we are very lucky that we've got a really great board and great operations team and these great people sort of sitting just outside that can provide this expert advice and opinion on matters. And we can easily just pick up the phone and talk to someone like Augusto Zimmerman and talk about
Mm.
constitutional stuff or whatever. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that is happening, and it's really positive.
It is really positive, and more power to the guys, you guys, for organising all of that. So yeah, there's still a lot in play. We're here in New York City that the Supreme Court over there has ruled that all employees working for the city who lost their jobs due to mandates are reinstated with back pay. We understand.
Good.
Um, we've seen the victory for the Victorian firefighters. We need to see victory in Queensland for the paramedics.
Yep.
There's still a whole bunch of people affected by this, Jono, and the sooner we get to that space, the better. These are the things that we've got to continue to focus on and not be distracted by all the other stuff. So,
Well, and just pick up the phone. I mean, yesterday I rang the New South Wales Police Association and said to them, well, you people have been, very, very embarrassingly silent in relation to protecting these police that have been sacked. And the minister in New South Wales, Yasmin Catley, who was a librarian, is now the Minister for Police, seems to think that these people are bad eggs and shouldn't return to office. I mean, this just demonstrates the nut jobs that get elected to Parliament. I mean, how on earth does somebody that was a librarian become the Minister of Police? Just beggars belief, I tell you. Um,
yep.
I can't work it out, and I don't know how Chris Minns, who's got a few runs on the board. I mean, he seems to be doing better than expected. Mind you, he's got no opposition in New South Wales. But how do these people not get pulled into the office? I mean, they desperately need police in every state and territory of Australia. These people haven't done anything wrong. Their only crime was that they decided not to take an injection that's turned out to be absolutely catastrophic with its side effects. It's killed people. It's killed people. And yet,
Yep.
in places like Victoria and other places, we've seen urgent notifications because somebody might, pull a hamstring getting a book off a fire engine. But this stuff just keeps going unchecked.
Tell you what else I'm noticing too, Johnny, is uh, an almost pandemic-like fear of government amongst people in this country.
Mm,
Have you noticed that?
yeah.
Um, I got an envelope the other day with a New South Wales government letterhead on it, and I got to confess, a little twinge of anxiety came over me, and it was something nothing. It was something to do with it was something nothing. But the threats that are constantly coming, and the invasions of government. We saw. Let's look at agriculture, for example. The Varroa mite scare out of Newcastle Harbour.
Yeah.
The knee-jerk reaction where thousands of hives were destroyed and the livelihoods of hundreds of beekeepers destroyed that didn't have Varroa mite in them. Uh, Infiltrating the hives with petrol-soaked rags to suffocate the bees, while the beekeepers, many of whom are very attached to their bees, were bawling their eyes out. And then after all that was done, an admission that, oh, we don't think that strategy is going to work, so we're just going to have to live with Varroa mites.
Mm.
You know, that sort of thing. The fire ant debacle in Queensland,
Another one. Yeah.
that is another one. Renewable energy, um, the registration of all your animals, like licenses. We're told that if we've got any sheep eating our grass at the moment, unless we electronically tag them at a cost of $25 a head and register them, we're going to be penalised in our rates. They're going to impose a levy on our rates, and the reason being they're concerned about the biodynamic safety of our country. Now, other issues, people can't go bushwalking anymore, especially in Victoria, unless they're on designated tracks. You can't go bushwalking.
Mm.
You're liable to a $1,500 fine or even worse. The fanatical push about cattle that are creating greenhouse gases, the constant rise in the cost of living, this never-ending division, and a people and a government that is perpetually, what's the word? Offended.
Mm.
Everyone's offended.
Yeah.
You know, it's just gone absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Hey,
Wasn't Michaelia, hey? Michaelia Cash.
Michaelia, I was just about to mention Michaelia Cash. Now, I'm not a big fan of Michaelia Cash,
Mm.
but I'm a huge fan of Jacinta Nampijinpa Price.
Mm.
And what she said about welcome to country in the Parliament, in the Senate chamber the other day. If you haven't seen it, we suggest you look it up. It was a piece of statesmanship we haven't seen for a long time. The way she described it, and you posted recently, John, a video of a wonderful black woman uh, talking about we should be having, instead of welcome to country, which doesn't mean anything to anybody, including us, we should be having a minute's silence at the football for the Anzacs. That would be better
Mm.
because she believes in Australia. She doesn't believe in all this division. And most Aboriginal people think that way.
Yep.
It's like most LGBT people don't want all this fuss going on about the LGBT community. They just want to get on with their lives.
Yep.
This is where we're at. Anyhow,
We are one, we are many.
we are one, we are many. And lo and behold, Penny Wong
Penny.
has to get up and make one of these politically motivated virtue signaling statements that this is a part of who we are in this country. This is a part of who we are in this place. And Michaelia Cash rose to her feet as head of the opposition in the Senate. And And Penny Wong said, "No, I don't want her to have any to contribute anymore. That's it. I'm against it." But luckily, the chairman of the Senate said no. The president said no. She can speak. Well, she ripped Penny Wong a new orifice, and it was the way she did it. Michaelia Cash, you've just scored a lot of points with a lot of people in Australia.
Yeah.
Let's start applying that to some of the other issues that really matter to Australians too. It's a masterful thing. You need to look at it, folks. It's just a really, really good piece of. It's 5 minutes or 8 minutes that will really uplift your soul.
Her stock went up a few points, didn't it?
It did. It did. So anyhow,
Yeah,
where can we go, John?
well, look, where can we go, Hoodie? Look, there's been um, I want to. Well, that's the other thing I meant to say. Now we went to a concert on Saturday night. Sally organised some tickets, so went down there with Foxy and Mandy and Sally and Marg and watched John Steffen. Um, Now you remember John Steffen? He sang "You're the Voice" on the stage there at Epic. But
You can't not remember John Steffen. He's brilliant.
wow, yeah,
He's
and
one of the best voices in Australia.
amazing,
He's the
amazing.
voice.
He
He's the
is.
voice. Yeah.
He was incredible. So he did a Roy Orbison show, and then the following day in Albury, he did one with John Denver and Glenn Campbell, I think it was. But yeah, he's a phenomenal human being, and he's a phenomenal voice. And yeah, we're lucky in Australia to have such talent and such good people. But just wanted to. Shout out to him and say thanks for a wonderful night. Everyone in that Civic Theatre over there thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was good to catch up with him.
Yeah, look, great stuff. And he's been so giving of his time and talents to the cause. And Tumbarumba, Sal and Marg, they're never far away from the action, are they?
It was her birthday too.
Happy birthday, Sal. You're an absolute champion. What was she, 99, John, was it? Oh, she's gonna kill me.
I think you're in trouble. Yeah.
She's gonna kill me, Sal. I didn't mean it. Johnny told me to say that before I press record. Yeah, wonderful
Uh,
people. Anyhow, John, we better bring this to a close. I've got the pleasure of now. This is something a lot of people are starting to wake up to. An initiative that came out of Hoodie's Heroes from suggestions was that we start up like a health chat
yep.
on social media, and so they organised, set up a group called Health Chats on Facebook and others, and I do a half-hour weekly interview with Ian Brighthope, and people just write in with issues that they'd like Ian to give them some advice on, and he gives them. There's disclaimers obviously because he's not practicing anymore, but there's nearly 50 years of wisdom in Ian Brighthope, and people are loving it. So look for health chats on social media, and yeah, I get a list of questions, and I just say to Ian, Stuart from Perth has asked the question, what does this mean and that mean, da 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 da, and he gives us an answer, and it's we're focusing on solutions, so it's really
Mm.
good.
That's positive. Another positive, and
Yeah.
geez, those Hoodies heroes do some wonderful stuff in the backdrop, don't they? They're really really great.
Well, apart from my name being on it, mate, I have very little to do with what the work they do. They do all the work, and I'm just a lucky guy that gets all the compliments coming to me about how good these people are. They say, "Oh, your Hoodies Heroes groups are amazing. They're just beautiful people," and they are. Every single one of them. They're just fantastic.
Yeah,
There's thousands of them out there, and they're all still out there doing their best. So that's all we can do. Let's have a prayer, eh?
let's do that.
Dear Lord Father in heaven, we just want to thank you, Lord, that we can come calmly to our screens today to talk about issues that are going on, some that are healthy and some that aren't. We've covered both sides of the spectrum today. And Lord, we just pray that compassion reigns, that we should all put aside this divisive rhetoric and just come together as people who want to see the best for our country and the best for our neighbours and our families. So help us in that, Lord. Help us to remain calm and help us to keep ourselves nice and let's get on with the job of living, Lord. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Johnny, you've often been heard to say
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
you couldn't. And look, there might be a bit of disjointing in our program in the next couple of weeks because Michelle and I are off to a health retreat. Misty Mountain. We're going to Misty Mountain.
Wow.
Barbara O'Neill's retreat. And we're
Back to
going
the
there.
cold shower, cold showers.
Hot saunas, cold showers, fasting, and no coffee, and no, yes, a lot of vegetarian food, and yeah. Somebody shouted us that about 3 years ago, and we never ever got to use it. But we've had a few health issues, Michelle and I, and we figure it's time to go and take a break and do that. So I'll be incommunicado, John, but you'll be feeding stuff into the channel, I'm sure.
Definitely.
And we'll try and get some interviews in the can. So, Australia, we love you. Pure and simple.
We do.
No hidden agendas. We just care about you and we love you. And it's time we all got together and just shared the love. Stay out of the trees. See you next time on Club Grubbery. Bye for now.
Hi, guys.